Welcome to the Real Experts Podcast. I'm Brett Jennings, and for the last 15 years, I've traveled the country to meet, mentor, and mastermind with some of the brightest and best minds both inside and outside of real estate. Get ready to elevate your game as we unpack the mindset, strategies, and tactics of these elite performers achieving extraordinary results. Welcome to the Real Experts Podcast. I am your host, Brett Jennings, and I'm super excited to share this introductory episode with you of the show, The Real Experts. So what is the show all about? Well, we're going to be having a conversation over the coming series of episodes about the intersection, the crossover point between business growth and personal growth. Because here's one thing I've come to learn myself is that in 30 years as a serial entrepreneur and over 15 years in starting a real estate business, going from zero to over $1 billion in sales in a single year, is this. All real growth on the outside is preceded by growth on the inside. I like to say the growth of your business is inside you, not outside you. So what we're going to be hearing in these series of interviews that we do with what I will call elite performers, people who are in the top 1/10 of 1% in their profession, is about their success journey. We're going to hear the ups and the downs, the challenges they incurred, the insights that came from those challenges, and how the pattern that we get to see is that the real growth inside their business happens after the growth in the personal development side. And so this is going to be our journey as we talk and listen together to these interviews of these inspiring people. And with that, I'd like to share a little bit about my own personal experience and what brought me to this realization about the growth of business being preceded by your personal growth. So for me, just to kind of rewind and give you a little backstory, I've always had a major entrepreneurial bug. I think I started my first business was really in second grade. I was born in Silicon Valley, grew up in the city of San Jose, and we have an amusement park here called Great America. And as a second grade kid, my parents took me out there one weekend. And in between rides, we stopped at a concession stand and they bought me one of these giant dinner-sized lollipops. And so I'm opening this thing up, I'm pulling off a cellophane wrapper, and there's a little sticker on the back. And I see the sticker and I grab it and I read it. It says Kendon Candies. I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's like a candy factory, and you probably saw the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It was always kind of inspiring to me. What would a really real candy factory be like? So I kept that little sticker, stuck it in my pocket. And when I got home, this is the days before we had Waze or Google Maps. We didn't even have the internet. I pulled a map out when I got home and I looked at this sticker and this address and I realized it was about 3 miles from my house, probably 15, 20-minute bike ride. So grab my bike, pedal on over there, knock on the door and to the factory. And factory manager comes out and says, son, how can I help you? And I said, hey, I'm here and I wanted to maybe buy some candy. He said, well, sorry to tell you, but we don't sell retail, kid. And so a little dejected, I got on my bike and was getting ready to pedal away. And he said, but let me tell you one thing we do, if you'd like, you can come back on Wednesday. Wednesday is the days where we sell our factory seconds. These are like lollipops that are broken or cracked or the colors run. And so I was excited about that. I went home. And then 3 days later on Wednesday, emptied out my backpack after school, pedaled on over there with like $4 in my pocket. And they were selling these seconds for 25 cents a pound. I had 16 pounds of these giant lollipops I packed into my backpack, pedaled on home, sold them at school, and it had an awesome little business going until the bureaucratic jurisdiction of the principal's office shut me down. So that was my first endeavor into entrepreneurship, which is interesting because as you'll hear my story, the next business I actually started, real business I started, I ended up selling candy as well. So so fast forward from second grade to my sophomore year in college. And this is really where my personal growth journey began. I was an athlete in college, in competitive sports, and I ended up having a health crisis, a near-death experience. I was taking some steroids for sports performance. I ended up getting an infection at an injection site. Ended up with kidney and liver failure. I was in the hospital for 19 days with a fever of 106 and lost 53 pounds in 19 days. And as my body was withering away, I remember my sister came into the hospital room, burst out into tears, and it's like, oh my God, my little brother's dying. And I remember like looking up at her and telling her, I'm gonna be fine. Like I'm I'm okay. I'm totally okay. And what was interesting was in that moment, it wasn't like a hope or an aspiration or an affirmation that I was okay. It was like this knowing. And prior to that moment, as an athlete in college, I was really identified with my physical body as a jock. It was like, I am my body, bigger, better, stronger, more. And something happened in that experience as my body was withering away. Something inside me woke up that I realized what was happening to my body as it was withering away wasn't happening to me or whatever the me I am. And in hindsight, I realized that was a real turning point. There was an insight there that sparked the next leg of my personal growth, which actually happened the next semester in college. I ended up taking an elective class. I could have took a number of things, but one of the things that caught my eye was a class in meditation. And so this meditation class, we had to meditate 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 12 weeks. And I tell you, it changed my life. Like the heavens didn't open up for me. Okay. So Buddha didn't appear, Jesus didn't appear. But what did happen is I had started a business that I will talk about in a moment in college, and it was going amazing. My grades were getting better. My relationships were getting better. It was like everything had this flow to it. And I was like, man, this is like, I can't put my finger on it, but there's something to this meditation thing. And so that kind of leads me to the business that I had started in college. So the entrepreneurship bug kind of bit me again, and it was actually inspired by taking a quick break here on The Real Experts. This podcast is all about mastering the mindsets, strategies, and tactics essential for becoming the best version of yourself, both personally and professionally. If what you've heard today inspired you, don't just make this a one-off, make it a habit. Hit that subscribe button now to join this community and stay inspired. We've got an epic lineup of future guests coming your way that you won't want to miss. A personal development guru, Tony Robbins. So my oldest brother, who was 16 years older than me at the time, had started his own company. And when I got to talking to him, he had a television production company. My brother did. And he and I were mountain biking one afternoon, and he said, I've been listening to these tapes from this guy, Tony Robbins. I've always wanted to start a television production company, and he'd only been in radio up until that point. And I didn't quite know how to do it, but as I listened to these things and kind of asked me questions about what was in the way or what were my limiting thoughts. And I just realized it was all in my mind. And so the story of my brother starting his company inspired me. And so I bought Tony Robbins' Personal Power Series. Back then, I think it was 1993 or 4. And as I went through the workbook and it asked all the questions, and it got me to start this business of my own, which ended up being a vending machine business. So selling candy and snacks through vending machines. I picked up the idea from, I was working in selling consumer electronics in college, and we had a break room. And when I go in the break room, about once a month, I'd bump into this guy who was filling the vending machine. He happened to own the machines, and he told this story about how he started with one, and 3 years later, he had like 100 accounts. He was semi-retired. I'm like, wow, that sounds cool. So I started this vending machine business, and it was going great. I'd learned to meditate. So I graduate from college, and I get a postcard in the mail from this guy, Tony Robbins. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, this is pretty cool. And it was this event about a fire walk weekend in San Francisco, which was close to me. I don't know about walking on fire, but I'm going to go check it out. So if you haven't been to a Tony Robbins event, it's mind-blowing. It was a fantastic 3-day experience. You're jumping around. It's like a cross between a comedy show, a seminar, a concert, and a rave all in one. And I came away that weekend just blown away. One of the things that two things really stood out to me that we did in that weekend. One was he takes us through a process where you visualize your future, and he asks you to make a decision about something that you want to create in your life. And at this point, this is 2.5 days in, and I was like just kind of starstruck by the guy. And I was like, you know what? I want to work for this guy, Tony Robbins. So I kind of envisioned myself working for him. And then the very end of the weekend, the other kind of notable experience there is he did a final closing process where he took you deeply into a state of love. He had you close your eyes and remember someone or something that you experienced a feeling of unconditional love about. Could have been a parent, grandparent, a pet, but someone or something. And then he has you kind of amp up or expand this loving feeling, and really, really gets you into. I remember getting a really, really high place, like literally opened my eyes and a tear streaming down my face. And he says, walk around the room and just pause and look at people in the eye and don't say anything. And it was like, wow, I was like seeing the face of God in people. So I walked away from that weekend going, man, I really want to work for this guy. And so my two takeaways is we're going to talk about insights from personal growth journeys that expand your life or your business. This was one of them. One, have a really clear vision about what you want to create in your life. And two, bring it into the vibration of love, and you will be amazed at what happens. So let me tell you what happened for me. I left that event and wasn't quite sure what I was going to do next. I still own the vending business, and it was producing some nice monthly income for me. And I only had to work a minimal number of hours. So I'm like, hey, I want to do some traveling. And I decided to grab a backpack and head to India. The meditation course I took, we read a number of different books and texts about meditation, including some from the yoga traditions of India, some from the Zen traditions of Japan. But India sounded super cool. There's a book called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And it's a phenomenal story about this young man who grows up in India around all these sages and seers and saints and the miracles they do. And so it inspired me to go to India. So I put my backpack on and head to India for 2.5 months. I trekked up through the Himalayas to the Everest Base Camp in Nepal, and then back down into South India and spent a bunch of time ashram hopping, following these yogis and swamis meditating in the jungles of South India. And I spent that time, came back, kind of wondering what was next. And I get a phone call from a woman who I hadn't talked to in probably a couple of years. And we get to catching up, and she goes, hey, what are you up to? And I said, just came back from India. What are you up to? And she said, I work for Tony Robbins. I said, really? What do you do? And she said, well, I work for the international sales support. And I'm like, wow. And she said, you just came back from India? I said, yeah. I said, Tony's amazing. One of the things I thought was I'd love to work for that guy. She goes, well, what's interesting? We're supposed to leave for Milan, Italy next week, and we're short one person for the international sales support. You have a passport. You're familiar with Tony Robbins. Would you be open for interviewing for the position? And I said, absolutely. So what ended up happening was 10 days later, I'm in Milan and started a 2-year journey living and working on the road 21 days out of 30. I spent 200 days on the road one year with Tony Robbins, and it was just an amazing, life-changing experience. So a couple of points that, again, I want to share and highlight there is just what happens when you're intentional with a clear vision. And yeah, so that was really my journey with Tony Robbins. I ended up leaving his company in 2000, and I started a financial services business. So that was the second real business that I got into. And I built that business over the course of 5 years to about 300 clients. And all my best clients owned a lot of real estate. So success leaves clues. And I thought, you know what? I'm kind of probably in the wrong business. I should be in real estate. I hadn't really accumulated enough wealth to invest on my own yet. So I thought, well, I could start as a real estate agent, learn the business, learn the industry, learn the market, and learn how to invest and go from there. So I sold the financial services business and got started in real estate in 2008. As luck or chance would have it, I got my license, and 3 days later, Bear Stearns collapsed. And for those of you who don't know, that was the beginning of the housing crisis, which was a really challenging, trying time in real estate. But it put me in a place where I had to make it happen. I did make some money in the sale of the previous business, but right around the time that I got my real estate license, I went through an IRS audit. Some of the financial services providers I was working with in my previous company that were providing tax strategies were doing something that was in the gray area. And we all got looped into an audit, and I lost all the money I made in the business. So here I am. It's 2008. I just got my real estate license. Bear Stearns collapses. My wife is 8.5 months pregnant, and I'm $100,000 in debt. So not a great situation, but what I can say looking back on it was that it was a perfect storm. That constellation of circumstances when your back is against the wall and you have to make it happen, you're going to make it happen. And I did. But the other thing that came forward there for me that was really formative was something that my mentor said to me. Because when in the beginning, I was really focused on, making money because that was what I really needed. And he said, Brett, don't focus on making money. Focus on adding value. He said, money is just a scoreboard for the value you bring. Just focus on bringing as much value you can to as many people as you can, and the money will take care of itself. And that's literally what happened for me between the years of 2008, 9, 10, and 11. I continued to grow the business year over year, and it got me to the place where I earned my first $1 million in commissions in a year in 2011. And that was a fantastic journey. And then I got stuck there for 3 years because I realized I was still focused until I really, really found what my purpose was. And then from there, we went and I built a real estate team, and that team became a brokerage. Between the years of 2018, 19, 20, and 21, we went from about 100 million in sales to over 1.2 billion in sales. And that really came about by getting crystal clear on my personal purpose. So as we're going to talk about over the coming episodes, there are going to be some themes you'll hear about purpose, about service, about having a vision, elevating it to the level of love, and the power of the exponential growth that can come from these high-minded, high-vibration ideas. So if you've enjoyed the conversation today, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you'll be sure to catch those episodes as they drop. Until we talk again, this is Brett Jennings saying, never stop growing. Have a great one. That's a wrap for today's episode of The Real Experts. If you like what you heard, take a moment and leave us a review and subscribe to join this incredible community of changemakers. Better yet, share this podcast with a friend or fellow agent who you know could benefit from these insights. If you'd like to learn more about our one-on-one or group coaching, check out our website at www.bearealexpert.com. We'll be back next week with more expert advice, so stay tuned. Until next week, don't just be an agent, be the expert.